Hello, AP Environmental Science, and welcome back. We're going to talk about waste generation and waste disposal, just what you've always wanted to talk about, trash. Only humans generate waste. We've examined systems before in terms of inputs and outputs and internal changes. We're about to begin our discussion on solid waste in kind of the same way, by considering the inputs and outputs of materials that end up becoming solid waste. Now we're going to define solid waste and examine the contents of waste, like a waste stream and a waste generation and its trends. Now we're going to conclude with a with a recap and examine an examination of electronic waste specifically, and because there's really specific challenges that arise from actual electronic waste. So in this module, you're going to need to be able to explain why we even generate waste and describe the recent waste disposal trends, and then also describe the content of the solid waste stream in the United States. As life in many countries has become increasingly dependent on disposable items, the generation of solid waste has become more of a problem for both the natural world and, of course, the human environment. We're going to examine solid waste, something that only humans generate. We'll examine the methods of reducing waste and ways of recycling. And then we're going to describe the principal methods on how to get rid of waste, like landfills and incinerators. And then we're also going to consider the most toxic forms of waste, like hazard waste. We're going to conclude again by the discussion of innovative ways that we can think about to reduce and also ways that we can also process solid waste. It's time to see it in a little different perspective. Okay, now that I have you a little confused, let's get even more confused and talk about e-waste, what we call electronic waste. And that is a component of municipal waste as well. And it's a small by weight, but it is very rapidly increasing. So consumer electronics include things like televisions, computers, portable music players, cell phones, and that's like 2% of the waste stream. And this may not sound like a large amount, but as an environmental factor, it's huge. We can't discard these objects, and so the older that they are, the more that we have them, the more and more complicated they are to dispose of. Like those older style TVs, those have a cathode ray. It's a CRT. It's like a television or a computer monitor. It only weighed 1 to 2 kilograms it had like heavy metals, and it also had like these huge toxic mercury types of metals running through it, and also cadmium. They're very poisonous. And these metals, they're going to eventually leach out to the bottom of the landfill and into our groundwater. And so these toxic metals and other components can be extracted, but there's still a presence there. In fact, when they sit there and settle, they formalize like this huge formaldehyde type of liquid. And there's basically got to be some sort of incentive to recycle them. Many countries have begun this voluntary program to divert e-waste out of landfills. In the U.S., most electronic devices are not designed to be easily dismantled after they've been discarded. So in general, it costs a lot more to recycle a computer than it does to put it in a landfill. And the EPA estimates that approximately 27% of the televisions and computer products discarded in 2010 were sent to recycling facilities. Unfortunately, much more e-waste from the U.S. is exported to China, and where adults were, as well as some children, basically separate these valuable metals from other metals using fire and acid and these closed, tight spaces with no proper ventilation or protective clothing. And so and now we have a double problem, right? Not only is it expensive to dispose of, it's also toxic to dispose of, and then we send it to another country and children are exposed. So, even think about it, when consumers are trying to do the right thing by sending their electronic products off to be recycled, there's a good chance the recycling will not be done properly and or cleanly by grown-ups with, college degrees to separate it. So, the doom and gloom of all of this is, we've seen that creating waste, that it's unusable by most organisms, and it's unique to humans. And the refusal that we use to dispose of municipal waste and the generation of municipal waste, both total and per capita basis, and they also are increasing steadily, and that's happened over the last 45 years. So paper, food waste, and yard waste, that makes up about 58% of all municipal waste, and a fraction of each of those things is reused and recycled. But of the 227 million metric tons of municipal waste that could be disposed of, a little more than a third of it ends up being diverted from the landfill to be reused and recycled. And then we talked about e-waste, which is a relatively small component of municipal waste, but because of its toxicity and all the metals and stuff that are contained within it, it is disposing of it is a significant problem. All right, so next let's talk about how we do this in a landfill.